All right, so this episode's guest, I don't have to say much, but I'm just going to say she's Superwoman. I'm ex-TV producer Jennifer Moore, and with me right now is my good friend and newsroom manager. She's still in the business, Traci Wilson. Traci, welcome.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Traci, I was kind of stalking you on LinkedIn a little bit just to see all the places you've worked. You have worked everywhere. I think I counted at least 9 cities.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask if you would mind kind of walking people through your TV and journalism career.
Sure. When I got into the business, one of the things that really attracted me to it was the ability to see different places around the country.
Wonderful.
I was born and raised in the South. I lived in the same home from when I was 5 until the day I left for college, which was great. I had a great childhood, but I knew there was a lot of the country out there that I wanted to see, and TV certainly paved the way for me to do that. I initially started at CNN, but I will tell you, for me, I had a tight group of friends in college. I was always surrounded by people that I loved and cared about. And all of a sudden, I got taken out of college, put into CNN. I was having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and navigate the perimeter traffic and everything that Atlanta has to offer. And I was just a little too young, I think, to do that.
And the traffic's gotten worse since then.
Oh, I'm sure. I stayed there for 6 months and then decided that I missed the ocean and moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, to kind of what I consider the official start to my career at WECT in Wilmington. I started in the production vein. I was started running teleprompter and making OTS graphics part-time for $5.45 an hour.
Ooh,
I worked
big bucks.
Yeah, I did the 3. I went in at 3 and worked until 6:30, and then took a dinner break until 9, and then came back and worked from 9 until midnight. But I have to tell you, it was, if you can start small, I think that's great. I still have friendships from that stop on my journey. I still think about that station very fondly, and the people that I was surrounded with, and that was a really good place to start. But when you start small, there's only so much you can do. I call it grow and go. And so after a couple of years there, my news director, I had moved into the producing route, and my news director said, "You're great, but I don't have anywhere for you to move up. So why don't you go spread your wings a little bit?" And that started my journey from Fort Myers to Baltimore, Maryland, where I actually worked for Sinclair corporate headquarters. And then I went to Tampa, Florida, and then to Vegas the first time. And then from Vegas the first time to Charleston, South Carolina, Denver, Colorado, Austin, Texas, and back to Las Vegas. And each stop has had something special that I've learned, some friendships that I've taken with me throughout my career, and I wouldn't change it. Some people like to stay in one spot. That wasn't me until recently, so it's worked out really well.
So you've chosen a route that's different than some folks in this business. It seems like when people start out, they always want to be an anchor or a reporter. What made you want to go the producing and the management route?
For me, I really liked the writing side of things. I liked having the control over the newscast. I liked the construction of the newscast. It's a little bit different than being an anchor, although, a lot of anchors start out as reporters, so they're in the field and they're working their way up and they're getting to meet people out in the field. But for me, I really liked building the newsroom family. I love the people I work with. I liked seeing the same people every day. And I just think that when you start off air, you learn so much. Even if your goal is to be an anchor, spending a couple of years as a producer in your early years doesn't hurt a thing, because it gives you an understanding of how the newscast is constructed. So when there are problems or when there's breaking news, you have an understanding for what's going on behind the camera, and you're not just sitting on the camera waiting for things to be done. You can actually contribute as well to those that are trying to make you look good on the air. But for me, it was my love for writing that kept me in the producing vein. And then I'm also a swim coach, which is why I'm in a hat. I just got out of swim practice. But I like coaching people. I like seeing people start at one level and then being able to teach them and watching them move up to the next level of their career or do something that maybe they didn't think they could do. And with my market experience, having moved around so much and seeing what different companies and different stations do, I bring a little bit of wisdom from each of those pockets. And so it's cool when I get into a group of people who've been at a spot for a year, I can kind of inject a different perspective into things and maybe steer the ship in a little bit better of a direction if it needs it. So that's been what's attracted me to the management side for sure.
And I was thinking, so, okay, you and I first met when I started working at Bay News 9. And I was thinking back to when I started, you were one of the first person I ever met in Tampa. I went in for the interview and you were sitting there at your computer. You were the EP there.
Yep.
And you helped, like I had to do like a writing test. And even though you had no idea who I was, you helped me like get a computer set up and everything. And you were just so welcoming. And I think that's what I really remember most about you, Traci, is just you're such an open person, and you like to play the coach role. And I think that's a really good quality for a manager. And the other thing I remember about you is a lot of newsroom managers have a tendency to freak out. They're a little high strung, and that's not you at all. You obviously take your job very seriously, but you have this calm about you no matter what the situation is. You are always able to keep a level head. What is your secret to that?
I do like to sleep. I admit that. I can be a little underwired sometimes. But in a newsroom environment for me, freaking out, it just doesn't help. I'll give you two examples. When I was at WECT in Wilmington, this was very early. I was still directing. It was a weekend. And it was a smaller market. Technology then wasn't anywhere near what it is today. And our newscast went off the rails. And I had absolutely no way to control it. I rolled 4 commercial breaks within the first 10 minutes of the newscast. We had to do news, weather, and sports all together. At the end of the newscast, we had a camera in the studio, kind of a boom shot that overlooks everything. And you can just see my anchor put her head down on the desk. And she spent the rest of the night in tears over what turned out to be a very embarrassing moment for anybody who was on air. And everybody was freaking out. We were all running around yelling and screaming and get this, and do we have this? And I remember at the end of the day, it was an awful feeling of being undone. And so I learned from that and kind of vowed, I've got a dog right here if you hear hassling.
Hey, no problem. This is, this can also, we can include some animals in here. I've got a cat, so maybe I'll bust her out too.
Yeah, I actually got Kyle in Tampa.
All right.
We worked together at Bay News 9. He's still around.
I remember the puppy pictures. I do.
Yeah, he's
like,
11 now. My gracious. But I remember that terrible feeling. And so I vowed that I don't like to live in that space, that cluttered, congested, off the rails space. I can be a little bit of a neat freak. I like to know to see what's coming and that kind of thing. So then fast forward to my first stop in Las Vegas in 2009, I had a situation on the weekend where I was producing, and we had a big fire downtown that morning, and we had our reporter out for a live shot or whatever, and we were literally counting into the show, like 3, 2, 1, and the transformer behind my reporter exploded.
Oh my God.
That immediately killed the live shot, and I made a decision in that moment. I said, everybody throw your rundowns out. I'm going to audible this whole hour of a newscast. And we did it. And if you were watching at home, you wouldn't have noticed that there was a problem at all.
Wow.
And that was a much more controlled, focused method of execution. So over the years, I definitely prefer to live that way because it keeps people focused on what they need to do. Because if they see you as a manager, or if you're the producer leading the newscast, or you're the director freaking out, throwing things, yelling, screaming, then it really causes them to second guess themselves. So I've learned that there's a time to execute, and then there's a time to regroup. And then it's in that regroup that you can hash out whatever went wrong. I don't like to call producers in the middle of a newscast if something goes wrong, because they need to stay focused on what they're doing moving forward. So, that's just just kind of a mentality that I've adopted through my career. Now, I do like to get excited when we win or when things go perfect. I'm the first one running around the newsroom, high-fiving like a chicken with my head cut off. And that's a lot of fun. But in the moment, I think, the more focused you can be, the less likely you are to make mistakes, whether they're, production or technical mistakes, or whether they're factual errors that can lead to a whole different problem. But that's where that comes from for me. And as far as like helping you, I remember that. And I think at the end of the day, we're all trying to climb that ladder, and nobody's, necessarily better than anybody else in the large scheme of things. I mean, we're all born, we all pay taxes, and we're all going to die, right? So help a person out when you have that chance, because you never know when you're going to need some help. So I've always tried to be that kind of person too.
Now, you obviously really love mentoring other journalists. Do you have a lot of success stories, of people who maybe have worked under you and then maybe have gone on to some really great, great and bigger, better things?
Absolutely. It's funny. Everything I've seen people that I've worked with or been an EP for or an assistant news director before make it all the way up to the network news levels. And it's kind of neat to sit back and do that. I'll see people on, videos that go viral on the internet for news stories or whatever. And I feel like every time I see something related to the news, I'm always like, I know that person, or I worked with that person, or I helped that person. And so there's definitely a payoff to be had in that respect. It makes you feel really good. As far as specific examples, I can't think of any right now. But I can tell you the negative to that almost is how much I have moved in my career. Because there are places where I feel like just as I started to get my claws in, circumstances changed, or I made a decision to leave for whatever reason. And so there have been stops along the way where I do realize I didn't stay long enough, and I should have stayed longer to continue planting that seed. And that's what I'm doing the second time around in Las Vegas, is really focusing on building relationships, not only at the TV station, but in the community as well.
And I have to say, it's really nice to see managers like you. I know a lot of us in the news business, we've worked with under managers that we did not think were doing a very good job and did not think, treated us very well. So what is your advice to someone who's going into a management position? What kind of qualities or what kind of things would you recommend they do when they're first starting out?
I think when you're first starting out in the business, it's all about you. You're trying to do good, to get that perfect tape, or that perfect reel, or whatever, and move up as kind of quick as you can, especially if you do start out in the smaller markets. When you become a manager, though, it's no longer all about you. And I think sometimes managers can get a lot of pressure from corporations above them that put them in a different mindset, to where they become very focused on what it takes for them to succeed, and sometimes forget that they're leading the people on their staff. So as a manager, you always have to remember, when you get up every day, your purpose is not only to put on the best newscast and to do the best job you can, but it's also to teach and to make somebody else have a good day, so that they feel like they've won and they're prepared for the next level. And sometimes, managers, we're human. I have days where I'm not in a good mood, or I'm dealing with other things. I don't really want to talk to anybody, or I just kind of want to go sit at my desk and disappear into my own space. But when you get to work, you have to realize, I'm not here for me. I'm here for this product and these people. And it's my job to come in every day with a good attitude and to do the best I can, not only for myself, but for them as well.
Oh, well, we're in this sort of climate right now where there's a lot of hate being directed towards our industry, the news business, the media. Are there things that you want people to know that maybe they have the wrong impression about, or maybe people, just like stereotypes or misconceptions people have about the media?
It's, I think the thing is I have a friend who works for a company that's, been in the news a little bit lately, and he actually posted on his Facebook page the other day, I am not them. I am me, and I love the community I live in, and I love the job I do for the people in this community. And for me personally, every day, you just want to remember what's at the heart of local news. And that's to serve our community and to serve our viewers. And I try really not to get too much in that fray. I go every day and I try to do my job and to tell the producers and everybody that works for me or with me to do their jobs with the utmost integrity. And you know what? If we do that, it's okay. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the national headlines, the fake news, or all of that for us as much as it is what did a viewer take away from our newscast tonight? What did we tell somebody that, could change their life or that could help them with this problem or, that brought the community together? Like right now, we're really big into the hockey team that made the playoffs. And we're doing some stories on that and just focusing on, uplifting people with that. But even when the news is bad, it's more about focusing on the community. And if you go to work every day and you do your best, and you dot your I's and cross your T's, you're going to be okay. And you're not going to get swept up in that fake news vacuum. Of course, it's a different story in the national level, but, local TV, that's where it's at.
Yeah, and I think people tend to lump in local and national news, and those two types of newsrooms they're very different.
Very.
So it's really hard for you. I think it's very hard to compare those two. Sure. It's like comparing apples and oranges.
Absolutely.
Not that one's better than the other, they're just different.
No. Yeah.
Okay, so I need to ask you, what stories do you really geek out on? Like, is there any particular type of story that when you get to cover it, you're just really excited about?
Oh, I'm heart of the champion stories. I do like to tell the good news stories. We cover in local news in general. We cover a lot of the shootings and the car accidents and that kind of stuff. But for me, the stories that can really make a difference in somebody's world or can teach somebody something, those are the ones that I really go after. Just looking for the heart of any story, and sometimes the stories may start off as a double stabbing police chase. But at the end of the day, maybe you learn something special about that officer that responded, or maybe, the suspect had this crazy background to him. And because he did what he did and the news coverage was what it was, it can help him or her get help. So those stories definitely fire me up.
All right. And obviously social media and the internet has so much changed what journalists do. In your time in the business, what have you observed about what the impact social media has had on journalism?
Social media is its own thing. When I was at WECT back in 1998, I helped design and write for the first website the station ever had. I remember the web people from out of town coming into the TV station and saying, we're going to give this TV station a website. And it was pretty crazy to see what it's evolved to now. Yeah. The biggest thing for social media for me is it really challenges us as journalists, because social media has done away with appointment TV.
Yeah.
I don't have to go home at night and make sure I turn on the 6 o'clock news to know what happened in the world. I get push alerts on my phone all day long. If something big happens and I'm scrolling through Facebook to see what my friends are up to, it's mixed in there too. You really can't get away from the headlines, and it kind of creates this, well, why should I go home and watch the news? I already know everything. As journalists, it challenges us in the news as on-air journalists and newsroom journalists to make the news fresh and relevant and not seem old. The story that led at noon used to lead at 5, 6, and 11. Well, that's not the case anymore. You may just run a VO on it at 5 o'clock because it's old. So that's one area that's really challenged us to make local news about the viewer, because you have to bring people in and give them a reason to watch more so than what they've already seen on their phone all day long. For reporters out in the field too, it's challenging because now it's not, let's just go out and shoot and put together, go eat dinner, sit in the live truck, edit this package and go for it at 11. You've got everybody in the market is competing on Twitter. Who can tweet first? Who can do the Facebook Live first? And you have to really know how to budget your time. And you have to realize that all of those platforms are equally important. You can't just say, oh, well, it's on TV now. Like the main deal is the 11 o'clock package. No, you have to have the same emphasis on the social media platforms as you do on the on-air platforms. So that's made it challenging in the field.
No, that's so true. What do you feel like TV stations could do better to reach out to the people who aren't watching TV?
It's all about selling your product. It's about finding the heart of those stories and then making sure that people know, oh, wow, well, this happened, but I'm going to see this at 6 or at 11 or at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, and making sure that, you're selling what you have, that it's not just 2-alarm fire coverage at 11. It's firefighter rescues puppy, see the revival efforts tonight at 11. So it raises the bar across the board for people in the newsroom, for people in production, for people in promotions. So I think for TV stations to continue to focus on, really selling what they have. And then also your drivers have to look forward as well, like weather. Weather is one thing that's in the moment, and it's hard to sell it ahead of time when things are changing or happening. So I think, you definitely have to make sure that you're pushing your weather, and that the things that are changing, that you're selling those as well. And by doing that, you can cause people to want to turn in.
No, that's very true. On a personal level, what is your favorite social media platform?
Oh, I'm old, so it's Facebook. All the reporters that I work with are like, it's all about Instagram right now. But I like Facebook because, most of my friends are on Facebook because they're old as well.
You're not old, Traci. Come on.
Compared to the people I work with. I mean, you can be, 24 now and get a job in a top 50 market, which when I started, that certainly wasn't the case.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So you're a big Facebook fan. Is there a social media platform that you kind of want, like you see it and you're like, I don't know why this, I don't know, like for me, that was Snapchat for a while, and who knows what it'll be in another 10 years. Yeah. There's going to be something else. Do you have any idea in the next 10 or 20 years what it'll be like working in journalism? Like, what do you think is going to happen to this business?
No, I just don't know. I think
no, and that's the thing. Nobody has any clue.
I don't know. Sometimes I think that it's so hard because I think you're even cable companies are losing the battle with cord cutters. And so, when people are getting their news on, or their TV in general on Fire Sticks or YouTube Live or Apple TV or Roku, maybe TV in 20 years will be something you look up at the ceiling and say, I want to watch Roseanne, and a TV comes down in front of you. I just don't know.
I wonder if those streaming platforms like Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix, what if they start their own news networks? That's entirely possible. It's crazy. The things that could happen are just crazy. Well, a few months ago, you were working on one of the biggest stories we've seen in quite a while, the Las Vegas shooting at the music festival. I know that because I remember following you at the time. Obviously, it was a very difficult story to cover and very taxing on the newsroom you were at. What is it? How can you describe what it's like to work on a story of that nature to people who've never worked in news and never been in a newsroom?
Oh, man. It's your moment. It's not a good moment. But it is so far, and I've covered a lot of big stories, but nothing like that.
Yeah.
And, for context, I was in the newsroom within 15 minutes of the shooting. I lived close to the station. I had a friend who was at Route 91. She had texted. So, of course, we didn't know how bad it was. I'm driving to the TV station thinking maybe 2 or 3 people were shot. I'd be there for a couple of hours to get the morning show on the road and then come home. And, I came home 2 days later. But I remember one of my main anchors walked in, and everybody was really rattled because at the time, the misinformation, that was coming over the scanners, everybody, the police on scene, they were all trying to get a grip of what was happening. It was still very much active. And I took her hands and I said, this is what we do. I said, this is what we were put here for. I said, we have a community right now that doesn't know what's going on, if this is a terrorist attack or what's happening. So we're going to go out there and we're going to get them through it. And that's what we did as a station for, still to this day, to some extent, but in the immediate aftermath, that first, through Friday, it was the proudest I've ever been to be a journalist. It was the proudest I've ever been to be a manager. My staff on every level, I mean, from the beautiful woman who catered food for our TV station, to, the news director and general manager, everybody stepped up and focused on getting through that time. And the only other thing I could even compare it to is how tight a newsroom is when you're covering a hurricane, but with much more gravity to the situation. To me, when I retire, that moment is the moment. Sometimes you get lost in what you're doing every day. You're getting up early, or you're staying at work late, and it sucks and it's slow, and you've covered your 450-second car crash this week, and it's just like, why am I doing this? What am I doing? Especially with, the attacks the media comes under every so often or whatever. That moment, I was like, this is every move. This is every college course I took. This is every crap day I had training me for this. And my entire team, I've never been more proud of a group of journalists in my entire life, ever. And I hope it never happens again. But it's weird to say. I hope and pray it never happens again. But it was the proudest moment of my entire career, hands down.
And I don't think people realize when you're covering a story like that, that's a story that goes on for years. Yeah. It's not a week or two. It's something you guys will be continuing to do follow-up stories about that day, October 1st, for years. Yeah. That's like the understatement of continuing coverage.
Yeah.
Was there a moment, like, when did you realize in your head that just how big of a deal this was? Like, how the gravity of the situation, when did that kick in for you?
For me, I got to the station and immediately hopped up on the assignment desk, and I went old school. We had an easel up there, and I started writing. I have a column. I actually have the papers right here, but I have a column of what we know and what we're hearing, so I could know where to send different crews. And for the first, it was weird, because the first time it hit me, I was at the assignment desk. I had a TV in my ear, and when they released the gunshots, the footage, I kept hearing it. I heard it over and over and over again for 24 hours. And that I still have some issues today with gunfire from that. And I remember the assignment desk guy who was working that Sunday night. We heard on the scanners, we could hear the call of the paramedics taking one of the officers who had been shot to the hospital. And we could hear them yelling over the radio, we need to clear away. We need to open the road. We've got an officer down. And I remember just looking at him. We didn't say anything. We just kind of looked at each other. But then we had a crime and safety expert who is a retired Metro lieutenant on our staff. And we heard from him before it made it out into the country that at least 50 people had been killed that night. And when he said that, I looked at him and thought he was crazy. I'm like, there is no way. Like, we were thinking 2, 4,
Yeah, and that's how it is in these situations. There's no information. So It's really hard to tell. It's really hard to tell, like, what category this type of thing is in.
I tell you, the awesome thing about my station, and I know other stations in the city, we were so well taken care of by the community. We had people bringing food by.
Oh.
We had people sent us handwritten cards thanking us. I never went hungry, because there was always a business or a person. We had one girl, probably 20 years old, come by, and she was like, my mother baked these for y'all, and homemade cooked food. And the TV station as well, the HR department. people that aren't working necessarily directly in the news stepped up. I had people from sales texting me, "Can I bring you anything?" One day I just wanted a Coca-Cola. That's all I wanted. And a sales girl texted me on her way into work, "Can I bring you anything?" I said, "Can I have a Coke?" She brought me like a 6-pack of Coke from work. We had toothbrushes and toothpaste given to us. Our TV station rented an RV and put it in the parking lot for a quick nap spot, quick shower spot if you needed it. So it was really neat, not only to see how our station came together, but the community really rallied around the journalists as well.
Yeah, and when a local station has a story of national, international significance, it's very stressful, and you guys are put under a lot of pressure and demands. Everyone wants something from you.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be, it's like never ending chaos for several weeks at a time. And that's, I know a lot of other people have difficult jobs as well, but that working in the news business under those types of conditions can be very stressful.
Yeah.
Do you have any, obviously you've been dealing with this for quite a while. This is a business where it's kind of hard to keep your sanity. How have you been able to do this for so long without experiencing the burnout that some people might experience?
I think I've definitely experienced burnout. I'm certainly not immune to it. I do go through kind of phases where I sleep a lot, and I'm just really kind of some days. And then something like when October happens, or now our hockey team, which is tied into 1 October itself and that whole storyline. And, you have events to look forward to and things of that nature. But, at the end of the day, and for me, it's a cycle. Sometimes I do a really good job of it, and sometimes I do a really bad job of it. But as corny as it sounds, if I'm eating right and I'm exercising and I have goals outside of television, like say I want to do this triathlon or whatever, if I have that side of my life moving in a good order, then the work side of my life moves in a good order. If that side's off or skewed up, then I struggle sometimes. So yeah, I've thought about getting out of the business before, and I envy families who get a week off for Christmas and can travel, and who aren't working the holidays. And the older I've gotten, the fewer of those I've had to work. But yeah, I've definitely had thoughts of getting out. And then something like 1 October happens. And I can tell you right now, if that had happened and I wasn't in the news business, I would have found my way into a newsroom somehow.
You have driven to some sort of newsroom.
Something. Yeah, for sure.
This is obviously very, you are to the core a journalist, and clearly that's, I don't know, I know you had posted recently something about, you're like, I was trying to get out, but it kept pulling me back in. What do you think keeps pulling you back in?
Have you seen the movie The Perfect Storm? I am that shit.
Yeah.
Like when the sun comes out and they're in the storm, he's like, "We're gonna make it," and then they hear the thunder again. That's me. I don't know. It is it can be a very frustrating but a very fulfilling spot to be. And there are bigger picture things that I personally love to do. I like research, and I like, trying to figure out who our viewers are and how we can shape the product to serve our viewers, to keep them, turning on the news. And so I've never been a news buff all the time per se. I'm a big time sports fan. I'm a sports geek, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's not a bad deal at the end of the day. And when you can tell stories that change lives, even to the smallest degree, then it's definitely worth it.
All right. So I've got a bit of a two-parter for you. Okay.
Oh boy.
If you could go back in time and tell 22-year-old Traci, give her some career advice, what would that be? But also, if you were 22 now, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, gee.
Because I feel like I would give different advice to someone obviously graduating when I graduated than if someone was coming out of school now.
Okay. If I was 22-year-old me, I know this part hands down. I would tell myself, make sure you hold on to your early contacts. I did not do that. Coming out of college, my junior and senior year in college, I had a very exceptional situation. I worked with Michelle Tafoya and CBS Sports on the field for college football games. Peyton Manning and I had English class together.
You went to school with Peyton Manning?
Yeah, I went to
Oh
Tennessee.
my gosh.
Graduated the same day and
Wow.
everything. I'd gone to New York City and interviewed for a full-time job with CBS Sports. And when those didn't go through, CBS Sports offered me a job, but it was working in an archive room with 10 other people in New York City. And I had a dog. I wasn't all about living in an apartment with 10 other people. So when I chose not to do that and to go to CNN instead, I let all of those people go like fart in the wind. All of the people at CBS New York. I didn't really keep that much in touch with Michelle Tafoya, and those people had given a lot for me. They had taught me a lot. And so sometimes I look back and I wonder if I had just been more persistent and kept in touch with those people, where would that road have taken me? So if you're young and you're meeting people, make sure you hold on to your contacts. They are very valuable later on. 22-year-old me now, I don't know. I think it's funny. Like, I haven't been a producer straight out for many, many years. And I look at what producers now and I don't even know if I could do it, because they're editing and they're in some shops, producers actually go out and shoot stuff and come back and still produce a newscast. So I think it's just be moldable, be ready, know how to do it all, because at some point you're probably going to have to do it all, and nobody is above doing something, So
I think you're a great example of someone who's not too good to do something. You are never afraid of the dirty work, the grunt work. And I've seen you do it myself. And I think for a manager, I really respect a manager who can do the jobs of the people who work under them.
Yeah.
And I think
there's a reason on the production side, the way it used to be, if you wanted to be a director, you'd have to start with teleprompter. You'd have to work your way up to Chiron. You'd have to know how to do the audio board. You'd have to know how to punch a show and then be a director. And there's a reason for that, because if you're the leader of a train, you have to know how to fix any part of the train that breaks. Yeah. So definitely.
Yeah. And I can tell you, it's frustrating to have a manager who doesn't know how to do your job. Yeah. It is a little frustrating. And I see, I've had a few people reach out to me recently about, careers in broadcasting. And from where I'm looking, I see so many opportunities in broadcasting, not only in news, but also, everywhere. It's kind of crazy. Now there's people who are making lots of money on YouTube or by working for some sort of new media outlet. I feel like the opportunities for people who want to be in TV, film production, they're just expanding.
They really are.
It's really cool to see.
They really are. And my thinking is not as wide in that area as yours is. I admire what you've done and what you're doing. And I wouldn't know the first thing about how to do that, because, I grew up in a very traditional newsroom and with, very traditional newsroom ways. And as the platforms expand and the ways that people get their news, change, the options really are, limitless. You could you could produce and anchor your own newscast one day on YouTube,
Yeah, there's nothing stopping anybody from doing that. If they, if they can do the digging and get their own stories or report on stuff, they
good and bad.
Yeah. You definitely have there's definitely a flip side. From my perspective, it's great that people are able to broadcast without a gatekeeper, right. But I think a lot of these people also don't realize there's liability to that as well.
I think that a lot of times, somewhere in all of it, the responsibility of journalism has gotten lost.
Yeah.
We still carry the same responsibility that, the movie The Post, when they were doing that, the standards still have to remain as high. And it's going to be interesting to see as more and more, kind of outlets and things like that, and like you said, unpoliced journalism goes out there, that might actually drive people back to local TV news, because we are policed. We're policed. I police, and then my manager polices me, and then corporate polices them, and then there's always an accountability standard to be held to. And so, yeah, it's a little bit scary out there, but that might actually be, at some point, I think it's going to turn.
Yeah. And you even see YouTube doing this now a little bit. Now they're starting to police people on the platform. There's the terms of service. If you do certain things, your channel can get banned, or you can get suspended. So there are some things happening. It seems like it's almost like YouTube's trying to act a little bit as an editorial, going in sort of an editorial direction. It's interesting. So I'm curious to see where this all goes. And, Traci, I just kind of thought of something. I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest journalism lessons you would want to pass on to somebody? Like, what are some, like, if, someone wanted to be a journalist, or, you were just trying to express, what are some of the most important things to know about being a journalist? What would you have to say?
Oh my gosh. Being factual is more important than being first. But if you can be factual and first, that's great, but you don't want to, in this day and age, credibility is everything. And that's from facts in a story to spelling on supers. It needs to be right the first time, because the room for forgiveness, the margin of error is very small in this climate. The second thing, I guess, is just steel yourself up. Know that journalism is still about bad shifts, long hours, lower pay, working holidays when you're first getting in. It's not that case in every market, but that stuff still does exist. So be ready for that, and be driven and stay hungry for it. And, again, people said this when I started, and it rings true today. If you want to be a journalist just so you can be on TV, don't bother. You're going to suffer a lot.
Yeah. It's not worth it.
Yeah, no, it's really not.
Well, Traci, thank you so much for taking the time out to chat. Yeah. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at Traci Wilson, TraciWilson. Facebook, same thing. And LinkedIn, the same one. And those are the three that I primarily run with, are Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So
wonderful. If you want to see some of Traci, and Traci, your postings are always, like, every time you post on social media, you're not posting fluff. You're always posting some really meaty, interesting things. She's worth following, guys. Definitely. I'm going to link all her profiles below. And I also want to give you the chance, Traci, to ask the people watching a question, any question you would like, anything. Doesn't have to be news related.
Any question I like. What I've really just wanted to ask a large group of people is, what's the best part and the most frustrating part about local news, if you even watch it? And if you don't, why? Because, I want to learn more about what drives people to local news. So I think would be pretty neat to hear some responses on.
All right, wonderful. Well, Traci Wilson, thank you so much. And again, and also this is going to be available in podcast form as well. So if you would like to listen in the car, you can do that. I'm Jennifer Moore, ex-TV producer, and you can hit me up on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, and we'll be back for another episode again. Traci, really appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing.
All right. And if you guys want to subscribe to this channel, ex-TV producer, definitely do that. If you enjoyed Traci's interview, hit the like button, and I'll see you guys again later.